All human issues for humanity in general stem from the ego. All the suffering that we experience in life stems from the ego. Some of us have let out a prayer to the universe or to God in some or the other lifetime to become free of suffering altogether. In order to make us thoroughly free of suffering, our ego has to be very strongly transcended, if not destroyed. Ego has two mechanisms through which it keeps itself in place. One is the repressive function of the ego, and another is the defensive function of the ego. The repressive function is the one which doesn't allow a person to feel his entire inner climate. When the lid of ego is lifted up a bit, much more is felt, and that is how the ego is transcended also, because it is no longer busy repressing everything. At the same time, there is a defensive function of the ego which makes us insulated from whatever is happening outside. Once we are avoiding whatever is happening outside, once we are insulating ourselves from so-called external stimuli, then again we are playing a control game, which is what the ego wants. Through defense or avoidance and through repression, the ego is constantly trying to manage our own life. It is constantly trying to one up on the universe. It is constantly trying to exert as if it is having a strong handle on the situation. Whereas freedom from suffering requires a mindset which doesn't choose to necessarily control the situation, at least not during the journey. Eventually all the control is restored. In fact, far greater control is restored, and this control comes from the spirit and not from the ego. So as a part of the journey, the cosmic process is such that the repressive function as well as the defensive function of the ego are purposely compromised, and a person is in a certain way blessed and in another way is cursed to experience all that he or she experiences. However, in this entire process, the ego loses its grip. In the entire process, the spirit shines through, though it may not necessarily be visible, just like how a caterpillar has no idea how it is converting itself into a butterfly in the middle of the agonizing process. The more one understands the very dynamics of the process, the easier it is to align to it. And when one aligns to this, then it is far easier to navigate through the process, because nothing is good or bad except our thoughts about the situation. The situation by default is what it is. It is our thoughts around it that make it good or bad. So if we look at the process in its correct light, in its correct perspective, in its true perspective, then it's far easier to navigate through it, and it also gets in many ways simpler in terms of the timeline that it takes. It is collapsed to a smaller timeline. The turnaround time reduces, and the caterpillar converts into a butterfly faster. This is the entire essence, and one should make a thorough endeavor to understand this process. All it requires is to come to intellectual grips with it, so that one doesn't look at the situation through a pathological lens. Looking at the situation through its most appropriate lens, a holistic lens, is the greatest help one can give one's own self. Jai Gurudev.